High in the Andes Mountains, where clouds drift slowly between sharp peaks and deep valleys echo with wind and footsteps, the Inca world stretched across rugged landscapes that looked almost impossible to connect, yet somehow became one of the most carefully linked empires the ancient Americas had ever seen. Instead of relying on oceans or wide rivers, the Inca relied on land itself, transforming mountains into pathways and cliffs into corridors, as if the earth had agreed to cooperate after long negotiations with patient builders and determined rulers. The famous Inca road system did not begin as a single grand plan drawn on parchment, but as generations of pathways slowly joined together, shaped by local knowledge, hard labor, and rulers who understood that power moved fastest along reliable routes. Stone-paved roads climbed slopes, crossed high passes, and descended into valleys, while stairways cut directly into rock allowed travelers to move where wheels would have completely failed. Suspension bridges made from woven fibers swung gently over rushing rivers, reminding travelers that courage and balance were just as important as strong legs when moving through this empire. These roads connected deserts, jungles, mountains, and coastlines, creating a web of movement that ignored modern ideas about difficult terrain and replaced them with disciplined persistence. Walking these roads required endurance because altitude thinned the air, weather shifted quickly, and distances stretched farther than they first appeared, yet movement never truly stopped. Messengers known as chasqui ran in relays along the roads, carrying messages, small packages, and important news at remarkable speeds that surprised later outsiders. Each chasqui ran only a short distance, handing information to the next runner, proving that cooperation could outrun individual strength every time. This system allowed rulers to stay informed about distant regions, harvests, ceremonies, and potential problems without ever leaving the capital. Tampu rest stations appeared at regular intervals, offering food, shelter, and supplies, which turned long journeys into carefully supported experiences rather than reckless adventures. These structures revealed careful planning because nothing was placed randomly in an empire that valued order and predictability. The roads themselves became symbols of unity, reminding travelers that although regions looked different, they all belonged to the same larger system. At the heart of this system stood the Saipa Inca, the emperor who ruled with authority believed to be both political and divine. The Saipa Inca was not simply a king who gave orders from afar, but a living representation of the sun's power on earth. Because of this belief, loyalty carried spiritual meaning, blending governance with faith. Royal authority extended through administrators who oversaw land, labor, and resources with careful record-keeping rather than written words. Instead of books, the Inca used quipu, cords tied with knots that encoded numbers, categories, and information in complex patterns. Skilled record keepers could read these knots fluently, turning strings into memory systems that traveled easily along the roads. This method matched the empire's needs perfectly because information stayed portable, flexible, and resistant to damage. Roads allowed quipu data to move quickly, keeping the empire coordinated. Labor formed the backbone of Inca society, organized through a system called mita, which required communities to contribute work rather than money. People built roads, farmed terraces, served the army, or worked on state projects as part of shared responsibility. In return, the state provided protection, food storage, and assistance during hard times. Granaries along the roads stored surplus crops, creating safety nets during droughts or poor harvests. These storehouses demonstrated foresight rather than reaction because preparation mattered more than emergency fixes. Terrace farming clung to mountain slopes, reshaping steep land into productive steppes that controlled erosion and managed water carefully. Crops such as potatoes and maize thrived under the system, supporting large populations across challenging environments. The roads linked these agricultural zones, ensuring resources could move where needed. Ceremonies often traveled these paths as well, bringing officials, offerings, and shared identity from place to place. Processions transformed roads into sacred spaces, reinforcing unity through movement. Rulers understood the importance of visibility because seeing the empire reinforced believing in it. Clothing, architecture, and ritual all contributed to authority's appearance. Stone buildings fitted together so precisely that gaps almost disappeared, suggesting permanence and stability. This stonework mirrored the empire's ideals, emphasizing endurance over decoration. Palaces and temples rose in key locations, carefully aligned with landscape and sky. Cusco, the capital, functioned as both administrative center and symbolic heart. Roads radiated outward from it, emphasizing its central importance. Travelers approaching Cusco felt the scale of imperial organization long before reaching its streets. Foreign visitors noticed discipline and cleanliness, which reflected cultural values rather than strict punishment. Education for nobles included history, religion, and administrative skills, preparing future leaders. Knowledge passed through oral tradition, ensuring stories remained flexible yet consistent. These stories often explained why roads mattered and how rulers earned authority. Humor existed within this system because even strict societies allow laughter to ease pressure. Festivals combined music, food, and public gatherings, strengthening social bonds. The roads filled with color during these events as textiles fluttered and voices echoed. Movement itself became celebration. Military organization relied on these same routes, allowing quick deployment across regions. Armies carried standardized equipment and followed orders precisely. Roads ensured supply lines remained steady. Warfare emphasized control rather than destruction. Defeated regions were integrated rather than erased. Local customs often continued under imperial structure. This balance reduced rebellion. Roads carried authority gently but firmly. As the empire expanded, maintenance became essential. Communities repaired sections regularly. Damage never lingered long. Responsibility spread across regions. Everyone depended on the network. From mountain passes to coastal plains, the roads shaped daily life. Children grew up knowing paths by heart. Travelers felt guided rather than lost. Rulers governed through presence felt everywhere. By the time the empire reached its height, the roads no longer felt remarkable to those living within them because connection had become normal, dependable, and expected, setting the stage for understanding how leadership, loyalty, and movement continued shaping Inca power in the chapters that follow. As the Inca Empire matured and its territories stretched across immense distances, the road network became not merely a system for travel, but a living expression of authority, cooperation, and shared rhythm that quietly shaped how millions of people understood their place within the wider Andean world. Rulers relied on these roads to make governance visible because messages, officials, and symbols of power arrived regularly, reminding distant communities that the empire was not an abstract idea, but an active presence woven into daily life. When imperial inspectors traveled along these routes, they observed farmland, storage facilities, and community organization, ensuring that responsibilities were met while also listening to local concerns that could influence future decisions. This constant movement encouraged balance since authority flowed outward from the capital while information flowed back, creating a conversation rather than a one-sided command. The Cepu Inca stood at the center of this system, surrounded by advisors and nobles whose roles depended on careful coordination rather than individual ambition. Royal succession followed strict traditions, ensuring continuity, stability, and legitimacy, which prevented sudden disruptions that might fracture such a vast and carefully balanced empire. Because rulers were associated with divine power, maintaining order carried spiritual importance, linking obedience with cosmic harmony rather than fear alone. Ceremonies honoring the sun reinforced this connection, as roads filled with processions carrying offerings, textiles, and ritual objects that transformed travel into sacred duty. These gatherings reminded communities that participation mattered as much as belief because collective effort kept both empire and universe aligned. The roads supported this philosophy by making shared experiences possible across enormous distances that would otherwise isolate populations. Along these routes, language and customs mingled, slowly creating a sense of shared identity without erasing local uniqueness. Markets appeared near major road junctions, where goods from mountains, jungles, and coastlines exchanged hands under imperial oversight. Merchants benefited from predictable travel conditions, which reduced risk and encouraged long-distance exchange without reliance on coin-based economies. Instead, trust, obligation, and reputation guided transactions, reflecting broader Inca values. Textiles traveled widely along these roads, carrying patterns that communicated status, region, and purpose without words. Clothing therefore acted like another language, readable to those familiar with imperial codes. Roads also shaped time because travel schedules followed seasonal rhythms tied to agriculture and ritual calendars. Movement slowed or accelerated depending on weather, festivals, and harvest demands, ensuring that human activity aligned with environmental realities. This flexibility allowed resilience because adaptation mattered more than rigid schedules. Inca engineers constantly studied terrain, improving drainage, walls, and surfaces to protect roads from erosion and landslides. Maintenance reflected respect for future generations, since repairs benefited travelers yet unborn. Communities accepted this responsibility willingly, understanding that neglect would harm everyone. Children learned routes as part of growing up, absorbing geography through experience rather than maps. Stories shared during journeys taught history, ethics, and humor, making travel educational as well as practical. Elders explained why certain paths curved or climbed, revealing lessons hidden within design choices. Even silence along high passes carried meaning, encouraging reflection and awareness of scale. The army depended heavily on the road system because rapid movement allowed strategic responses without constant violence. Soldiers marched in organized units, their footsteps echoing rhythms that matched empire-wide discipline. Supplies arrived efficiently, reducing suffering and preserving morale. Victories relied more on coordination than brute force. Defeated leaders often traveled the same roads back toward Cusco, witnessing imperial organization firsthand. This experience frequently encouraged cooperation rather than resistance. Roads thus acted as teachers, demonstrating imperial strength through function rather than threat. As years passed, the network grew denser, absorbing older regional paths into standardized routes that felt familiar yet newly connected. This blending reflected the empire's strategy of inclusion rather than replacement. Monuments placed along key sections reinforced shared memory, marking achievements, boundaries, and sacred sites. Travelers paused at these places, turning journeys into sequences of remembered moments. Music accompanied some processions, with instruments echoing across valleys and reinforcing emotional connection to movement. Festivals transformed roads into flowing celebrations filled with color and coordinated motion. During quieter periods, traders, messengers, and officials ensured continuity. Nothing truly stopped. The roads shaped thinking as much as travel, encouraging long-term planning over impulsive action. Rulers measured success by stability rather than constant expansion. This mindset supported sustainability across varied environments. Yet challenges always existed, including earthquakes, climate shifts, and internal tension. Road systems helped mitigate these pressures by enabling communication rather than isolation. When disasters struck, aid moved efficiently. Food stores redistributed supplies, leadership responded visibly. Communities felt supported rather than abandoned. As the empire approached its later years, the roads remained strong even as external threats emerged. Foreign arrivals struggled to comprehend how communication functioned without writing or wheels. They underestimated collective knowledge carried by people rather than objects. Despite eventual disruption, the road system endured physically and culturally. Many paths remain visible today, still guiding feet centuries later. Modern travelers sense intention beneath each stone. The roads remember builders, runners, rulers, and farmers alike. They remind us that connection can be crafted deliberately. Leadership can flow through service. Movement can create unity. As this chapter closes, the Inca roads stand not as silent ruins, but as enduring lessons in cooperation, foresight, and respect for landscape, inviting us to imagine societies where power moves gently yet firmly, carried step by step across shared ground.